Time to talk about your money and certificates of deposit. Good investment, bad investment? Well, it depends on your approach. Stewart Welch from the Welch Group joins us this morning to explain. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Mike.
You know, back in the old days, I remember my parents, they would invest in CDs when interest rates were higher. And so to play it safe, it was a good, safe way to make some money. But then when the interest rates was low, that changed, didn't it?
It did. Well, I think, you know, a lot of people are really confused by stocks, worried about stocks. And bonds are even more confusing. So most people really actually understand CDs. So it's kind of a go-to place. But there is a strategy. One thing that's happening is we're having rising interest rates. And I expect that to continue for several years. So people ask me, if I was going to invest in CDs, what's the best strategy? And so the best strategy, or one of my favorite strategies, is what's called a laddering strategy.
Okay.
And so what you do is you take your money, let's call it $100,000, and we're going to divide it into 5 equal pots of $20,000 apiece. And we're going to take the first $20,000, put it in a CD that matures in 1 year, and then another 20 in 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I get it all set up 1 through 5 years.
So you go to the bank, I want this many CDs, and for that a 1 year, 2, and 3, just like that.
Yep, just like that. So I've kind of laddered those maturities, and then what's going to happen is 12 months from now, one of them is going to come due. And here's the trick: if you don't do anything, it'll automatically renew for 1 year, which is not what you want it to do. You want it to go. You want to renew it for 5 years. And the reason is you're going to get the highest rate, if that makes sense. So what they're paying interest rate on 1 year is lower than what they're paying on a 5 year. And 12 months from now, I expect the 5 year rate to be even higher. So every time a CD matures, you're going to automatically renew it for 5 years.
So you get the benefit of the increase.
You get the benefit of the increase, and you get the benefit of the highest rate. Again, because the highest rates are going to be on that on that 5 year CD.
All right.
So
what about some caveats on this?
So the caveats, what you're doing is you're averaging up your interest rates. If you kind of think about what's going on, as interest rates continue to rise, you're now getting the highest rates as you renew each of these.
But in turn, you know, you got to be careful though, because your particular bank may have lower rates than, say, a competing bank, and you may not even know it, right?
So that's perfect. You're exactly right. I think a lot of people think all the banks are competitive. They are not. So what I recommend that you do is go to bankrate.com, and they'll show you all the competitive rates across the country. And what I would do is pick some competitive rates, and then I would go back to your bank and say, hey, listen, I'd like to leave my money here. I want to continue to work with you, but I've got these rates. Will you match them? A lot of times they will, sometimes they won't. But you need to do what's right for you. So it gives you that opportunity to do that.
All right. A lot of bankers watching right now aren't too happy with Stewart. But you know, you want to make sure your money's protected. I think people feel safe with CDs, but depending on how much you're investing, you know, you got to make sure you're protected.
So you do. So if you're investing more than $250,000, you want to start paying attention. First of all, make sure your bank's insured by the FDIC, and the limits are $250,000 per account per ownership type. So for example, you could be at a bank and you could have $250,000 in your name, $250,000 in your wife's name, and another $250,000 in a joint name. $750,000 within one bank. You could then do it to another bank and insure up to $1.5 million.
All right, and keep in mind, I mean, you depending on the bank, you know, you can have a much lower investment minimum to get in there and try to make a little money. All right,
That's
Stewart,
exactly right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, it's